And so, generalized fear, like if you're afraid of this, even if it is likely, it isn't enough for a TRO, and I'm not seeing it so far. What? This is Judge Chutkan? There is no evidence that is been presented here, Judge, of Musk or DOGE doing the terminating.
The Department of Health and Human Services has spent $22 billion on migrants over the last few years. We're talking things like cars, homes, even help with credit scores. And guess where this money's coming from? The taxpayers' pockets.
Judge Chutkan seemingly caving on the DOGE lawsuits. She had oral arguments today in her courtroom in the District of Columbia. And you can see the case here is the state of New Mexico versus Elon Musk. Now, it's not just New Mexico, it's a bunch of other states. They all gobbled together here and they filed this lawsuit. This is from the original complaint. It's basically saying Elon's a bad guy and we don't want him involved in the administration. Like, that's what they're asking. Cut off Elon. And normally we're looking at the lawyers who are filing the suits, like Norm Eisen or Mark Elias's group, but these are state AGs, bunch of them. Mexico, New Mexico, Arizona, Michigan, California, Connecticut, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, many others. They are all suing, as you can see. Elon Musk, DOGE, and Trump all getting sued. Now, Trump's DOJ responded, and there was a hearing on this today. They say the state's overnight rewrite of their requested relief that you asked them to fix only confirms the basic fault with this emergency motion. The states, Judge Chutkan, cannot identify any imminent, irreparable harm that merits this court's intervention. They want Elon cut off, thrown out. There's nothing there that justifies that. So this court should deny the state's second draft. It is exceedingly broad, reaching so far as to all of those, quote, acting in active concert with Elon. Like, they want the order to embody everybody, and even anyone affiliated with DOGE, which could include the president, Senate confirmed officials, a host of other government officials as well, saying you need to cut them off. And it fails to provide Trump with any notice of fair terms. It seeks to enjoin Trump from accessing, they say, any data system. It's what they're asking for. That's included but not limited to confidential information, personnel data at various agencies. So this is like insane what they're asking of you. Nevertheless, we request that if this court is inclined to grant any of that, the court hold a hearing on Monday and allow us to brief this. Here's why. First, the states and their data access related claims are fundamentally disconnected from their legal theories, just like their brains to reality. The states have not raised any claim under the Privacy Act or any related statute that is actually challenging DOGE's access to data. Instead, the states have primarily pressed on appointments clause claim, saying Elon's not properly appointed, along with a related statutory claim, which is wholly unsupported and in reality false, about these authority assertions. We don't even have these things. So like, you're basing your lawsuit on a bunch of fake news that doesn't even exist. So we can't even really address this because your claims are just so illogical. But they say, look, all right, their legal theories are nuts. But even taking the state's legal theories as correct, they still offer no basis for emergency relief. Like, why would we cancel Elon from all of this? Even if they're right. Even if Elon were an improperly appointed officer, which he's not, there is no constitutional defect to sharing information with him, any different than there would be with a private citizen or an unauthorized employee. Now, to be sure, that may well run afoul of other discrete laws, but that's not what the state is litigating now. Okay, so like, you might say Elon getting access to that data or whatever is illegal, but you got to show us like what law, what piece of data was violating some record or something. Elon doesn't even need to have access to the data. Like, he doesn't need to go in and see the records or any of that. He can have somebody who is authorized to go see those records come in and say, hey, this is what I found. When you were auditing Social Security, what'd you find? Well, I found that this is what's happening. Elon posted this. So go audit Social Security. It says, okay, this is what I found. These are the numbers of people in each age bucket with death field set to false. So 0 to 9, 38 people, 10 to 19, 44 million, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 47 million people alive, right? Probably current alive with these Social Security numbers. But apparently when you keep going, we have 4.7 million people who are alive in the age range of 100 to 109. We got 3.6 million who are 110 to 119 years old. 120 to 129, 3.4 million people. Amazing. 1.3 million people are between 150 years old and 159 years old. Okay, great. So the point is, like, Elon is not going in there and looking at each individual record and getting information on 170-year-old, Granny Susie or whatever. But the person who is gathering this data and assembling this data has that information. So Elon Musk, just like a chief of staff like Susie Wiles or anybody else like Ron Klain, who's not appointed or confirmed by the Senate, who just works with the president, he can then interpret this, go, holy crap, hey, Mr. President, we found a problem. Seems like there's like 15 million people who are over 110 years old. So we should do something about that, right? So let's do it. So then Elon can just send the people back with the actual authority to go look at the records again. So he's just analyzing data like a consultant would, essentially, not accessing anything that's even controversial other than the data. But if you're saying he violated something else, well, then go find it. Go prove that. Make your claim. Sue for that. But you're not suing for that right now. As for the employees of USDS who may have access to agency information, the state cites nothing for the proposition that every action by every employee of an agency that is headed by an improperly appointed official is somehow unlawful, nor could they. That's because an appointments clause defect runs to the actions of the improperly constituted officer. It doesn't invalidate every act of the subordinates, citing a different case. Now, as fundamental, there is a basic mismatch between the actions the state have chosen to focus on, which is data access. Now they're just trying to shut the data off, and the essence of their legal theories. Both claims, the constitutional one, that Elon is unlawfully appointed, and its statutory counterpart, which is that Elon's violating the law, accessing things, they both rest on Elon Musk and USDS, DOGE service, having the authority to make decisions for the US government. They rely on that. But the premise is wrong. It rests entirely on conflating influence and authority. They're different. An advisor does not become an officer simply because the officer listens to his advice. Elon might talk to Treasury. Elon might talk to Marco. Elon might talk to somebody else. The officer is doing the thing. He's influenced the authority. The authority is actually doing the changes. And if you strip all of this of their lengthy rhetoric, the states, the government, in their ranting little complaint, they do not cite a single example, not one, where Elon Musk or anyone at DOGE has been given formal authority to exercise the sovereign power of the United States. Can you give us one example? Or are you guys just crying about, what's he accessing? No one knows. Our data. Huh? Relax. What is your point? The states and their sparse examples prove the point, okay? It's all hysterics. Their best, in fact, only example of any tangible action, even affecting the states, is a single pause grant from USAID, which I thought was foreign money. Why are the states getting that? But as is well documented in parallel litigation happening in other courts within this district, those decisions were made by properly named officers at the USAID. They were officers who were ultimately acting pursuant to executive authority that came from the president, not from Elon. Anywhere, nowhere is there any government action taken in the name of DOGE or by an officer in conflict with the appointments clause. And this is why they're going to have a real tough time slowing this thing down, because it's just information. Okay, Elon is banned from accessing anything. Okay, that's fine. He's just having phone calls with people and just saying, well, you know, if I were running the government, I would have a problem with having 15 million people over the age of 110 or whatever. Maybe we should look into that, right? It's always just going to be about information and productivity ultimately, and they're going to have a hard time stopping that. But they have to sue everybody, right? An injunction everybody from getting advice and from counseling, like Elon's going to be barricaded, but locked in a cell somewhere. But even if the state's premise is right, and Elon and DOGE has been tasked with wielding some sovereign power in some way, it has nothing to do with data access, which does not involve any exercise of authority at all. It's a purely internal act of government. So you're going to say we can't access data, our government, like at the Treasury or anywhere. Again, the states are free to litigate that such access violates some other source of law, as they have. They brought those claims in other courts. But the claims that they have chosen to press here turn exclusively on the improper exercise of authority. They're saying you can't do these things. We're saying Elon's not doing them. So what's your problem? And there is no exercise of governmental power against the states from the mere access of data, right? He's just looking at things, which is by definition a preparatory step to inform some later action. And second, the states and their ad hoc categorical relief, which means they want to enjoin anyone who is acting in concert with DOGE, like everybody who even is on DOGE's email lists, you're banned. With DOGE from accessing virtually any agency data, it's too sweeping. It's not even connected to any immediate harm to the states, and it's completely unjustified. When an agency shares data with others, the propriety of that decision will turn on the specific facts of how the information is shared and the statutes governing the agency. That is why, until at least now, data access cases have been litigated on an agency by agency basis, where courts have either denied relief or at least attempted to tailor it to the actual dispute. You don't get to just come in here as 14 different states and say they can't do anything in the government because we're upset that something bad might possibly happen. The state's approach seeks to pretermit these other cases and just order widespread prophylactic remedies on exceedingly vague grounds, but without the sort of particularized claims that they need for an emergency relief. Like, if it's an emergency, you got to explain why it's an emergency, and it better be one. A federal court, however, cannot proactively enjoin an entire class of conduct by the president on the ground that some future conduct may be unlawful and may affect the parties before it, especially now with the TRO. And all the more so, given that particularized legal questions that the states ask this court all come in under one one fell swoop. They're asking for everything. These data access cases often concern detailees from DOGE controlled and supervised by another agency. Now, the states make no effort to explain why that is unlawful. How? What's wrong with that? None of this is to say the court should proactively bless these practices, but by the same token, it cannot proactively enjoin them either. We need a particularized dispute, but this is general assertions and there's no tether to any actual illegality. And again, none of this, say Trump's DOJ, has much to do with the actual claims even pressed here. Even assuming the states are right on their legal theories, and they're very much not, then Elon and DOGE employees are effectively private citizens if they were right, because any authority they purport to wield would have been void ab initio from the beginning. But even then, there would be a separate dispute about when an agency can share its own data with such persons, which is a hypothetical dispute, hasn't even happened. It is entirely unbriefed and wholly speculative, given the states chose to litigate an entirely different case. And third, the states' claims regarding their personnel decisions are even more flawed. Wow, all these AGs are just so dumb, including Chris Mays from Arizona, moron. Again, even accepting the states' deeply wrong legal theories, Chris Mays, nothing here would warrant emergency TRO relief. As the court recognized during the TRO hearing, personnel decisions are not irreparable. Employees may be reinstated and back pay may be awarded, consistent with the statutes. Further, the connection between these decisions, turning on the notion that Musk or DOGE may take certain employee actions and may have some potential consequences, is way too hypothetical. We can't talk about that at a TRO, Judge. You're going to limit the executive branch because something may happen possibly at some time in the future. And fourth, the proper course of action is to just schedule this for a preliminary injunction. We want this court to convert the state's motion for a TRO into a preliminary injunction, set prompt briefings here. We take no position on when their response should be due, but we'll get ours in. And finally, we request that any injunctive relief, if you are going to hamstring the executive branch, Judge Chutkan, stay it so that we can appeal it for 7 days. And you should also require an injunction bond. Yes, I'm very happy to see this now introduced. Okay, this is the idea that the suing party should put up a bond, should put some type of security up to compensate the government for the lost productivity of workers wrongly enjoined, which the states do not even acknowledge, let alone justify excusing here. Okay, so if the states win, then a bunch of employees from DOGE and Elon, all this work comes to a grinding halt pending the litigation. Okay, if you want that to happen, well, why should we pay for that crap as the public, federal taxpayer? If the blue states want to bring these claims, they can come up with their money, post a bond so that the federal government doesn't come out of pocket for these types of damages. And this, I think, would stop if they actually got these, and if they start requesting these, then guys like Norm Eisen, guys like Mark Elias, who are launching these lawsuits with their big law firms called Perkins Coie, where Mark Elias used to work, all bringing their lawsuits. If they had to put up some money saying, oh, you guys can't stop the USAID funding. We're stopping it because there's fraud going out to the tunes of billions of dollars. So if you're asking us to turn off the fraud spigot, then you're responsible for the fraud if we win this lawsuit. And so why don't you post a bond to the tune of $65 billion a year? And then we'll turn off the floodgates, because if you lose and we win, then we can recoup our damages from your $65,000 billion bond. So that would stop a lot of it because they don't have the money to put up those lawsuits, and the federal judges would be stalled out on that. But now, with all of that said, that was Trump's DOJ submitting their response in Judge Chutkan's courtroom. Now let's go to the proceeding that took place today, courtesy of Margot Cleveland. She was listening to the hearing today and reported on what's happening as follows. She writes, Judge Chutkan comes out, courtroom, court is in session. All rise. Please be seated. Judge says, all right, good morning. I know it's President's Day, and I know we just had a hearing on Friday, but I did ask the plaintiffs here to file a proposed order and to narrow the terms of their requests. So in other words, the state should go back, stop asking for everything. She's like, I can't order Trump to resign. Okay, sorry. So just narrow that up a little bit. Come back to me with something else. They did file their narrowing motion on Saturday at 4. Now at Friday's hearing, the judge said, I was asking about harm and whether it was extremely serious and whether there was a colorable claim. So states explain what this harm is, what's so damaging to you. But the TRO and the one that they were proposing, it wasn't narrowly tailored to the government. So they narrowed it from the 11 to 2 department. I asked that it be revised, and so they did revise it. They came back, this is Judge Chutkan speaking, and they said, we want to enjoin Musk, we want to enjoin DOGE, we want to enjoin the defendants, and any accessing or copying of these 7 agencies, and terminate agencies in employment. Don't let them fire anybody. So the states came back. They said, don't let them fire OPM, don't let them fire education, labor, HHS, transportation, commerce. Okay. So the states came back and they asked for everything. The judge says, I can't take control of the executive branch. They say, okay, here, let's narrow this. How about you just take control of 7 agencies, the biggest ones, OPM, education, labor, homeland, HHS, energy, and more. Ridiculous. Now they asked for 14 days. Say, stall them out now for 14 days. So the funds can be evaporated and the grift can be deleted. They say, Your Honor, we need this. Like, okay, here's why. We submitted a bunch of declarations. There's news reports, and there's going to be a lot of harm if these agencies have firings. And DOGE is coming into the next ones. They're coming to get everybody. Trump's DOJ responds, Your Honor, this is way too broad. It's not even tied to the appointments clause at all. Like their original lawsuit was about the appointment clause, and like Elon is unlawfully appointed. So that's not even appropriate. So we would ask to proceed to a preliminary injunction. And at 1:30 a.m., they filed their reply, and then they added in a new claim. Now they're crying about data disclosure and how dismantling these agencies will cause irreparable harm and blah, blah, blah. And they oppose the preliminary injunction and they seek discovery. Now on Friday, there were TROs, and the TRO's purpose was to preserve the status quo. And so the same part test at TRO, there's kind of those 4 things they analyze: irreparable harm, public interest, and 2 other relevant factors. Emergency TROs are so imminent. And if we get to a preliminary injunction, then can we allow discovery? So the states say, look, we're confident, Your Honor, we have evidence necessary to get the restraining order. The judge says, yeah, I know you say that, but there's a lot of news reports out there. And Judge Chutkan is speaking, says the court can't act based on news reports. The news reports aren't the basis for a TRO. So like, what is happening to you specifically? The states say, well, I can already point to what has already happened and a lot of stuff, like we're losing our money. And Your Honor, we have absolutely narrowed our request. Our main concern now is how they are using the data. Are they using the data for purposes other than it was designed to be collected for? It's ridiculous. You can only look at the spreadsheet if you're looking for these, but not looking for that. Okay, judge says, well, how does that tie to the complaint? So like you filed a complaint. This is why we're here. There's no data materials in your complaint. So what is this? Well, Musk was posting about this, judge. He posted about this on X. He posted about DOGE, and he created a bunch of DOGE websites, and he's looking at everything: workforce, regulations, and finance, and he's using data they have to access the information and to decide how to make cuts. So the Department of Education, they already are noting there's a shortage of educators. They say there's going to be poor outcomes and more. The state's lawyers just like begging. They are relying on this money for operational and technical support. Judge says, well, what is being threatened by DOGE? Like, what are they going to take from the Department of Ed? What are they going to take? States say, well, DOGE has affected funding cuts across everything: education, research. Here's one example, Judge. The Institute of Educational Science, whatever the hell that is, okay? The Institute of Educational Science, it sounds fake, have in the past studied programs used in New Mexico. Judge says, well, if I don't issue the restraining order and if I convert it to a preliminary injunction and you win, what happens? If it gets slashed and you can't get the money, what happens? Well, he says cuts to nuclear are hurting New Mexico. Well, we're getting reports to DOGE that they called for cuts to CDC, says New Mexico. They're going to be cutting Indian health staff. It was just made public. In fact, the new secretary is going to try to rehire some people. New Mexico has a large tribe. And the judge says, okay. But what I need for this, for a TRO, the judge is saying, like, that all sounds bad, fine. But it has to be extreme harm. Like, it has to be imminent, like tomorrow. And it's going to definitely happen. So like, you're talking about all this stuff, but it's kind of theoretical. Like, where's the actual harm happening now? A TRO, says the judge, Judge Chutkan, by the way, is like not buying it, says something that can't be undone, right? Difficult or challenging, like this, it can't be undone. Like, that's why we're here. The judge says, Judge Chutkan. And so, generalized fear, like if you're afraid of this, even if it is likely, it isn't enough for a TRO. And I'm not seeing it so far. What? This is Judge Chutkan? The state says, oh my gosh, Your Honor, if Trump has evidence to refute this, then he can refute this. And Margot is pointing this out. That's not their job, the defendant's job. That's called burden shifting the burden to them. You filed the complaint there, bucko. State AGs, you bring the evidence. Not up to Trump. He's not breaking the law. You have to prove that he is. Judge says, citing to the Washington Post and their article about DOGE memos and the spending cuts, he's showing this. Your Honor, the Washington Post, look. And on Wednesday, they're going to start with staffing cuts. It's not just being described. The judge must have rolled her eyes, says, I understand your frustration. The state's references X posts of education's next, right? Elon's like, we're coming for education. He's like, see, Judge, you're going to come for us. So they want Your Honor to create a TRO based on the agencies and on what has been targeted. The judge says, well, there's a bunch of other cases like this case, and Judge Chutkan is reading in this case. Why can't the states get a TRO in 2 days? Like, if it's happening on Wednesday, then come back here on Wednesday. Like, come back here tomorrow or on Wednesday. Like, it hasn't happened yet. So right now, this is a prophylactic TRO. That's not allowed. I'm not allowed to do that. The states say, well, Your Honor. But going back to the Washington Post, there's a DOGE memo saying all agencies will be targeted. And we got a video on that coming out later tonight. Between DOGE memos, statements, and X posts on Wednesday, we're going to see even more. They're going to slash and burn everything. DOGE Phase 3, it's what it's called. This is the appointment clause claim. It's different than any other TROs. And our request is dramatically different because we aren't seeking to enjoin agencies. It's just Musk and DOGE. They don't want them to get the info because if they get info, then they can direct the other agencies on how to make the cuts. And the agencies are making the cuts. Well, the judge says, look, I want to look at the relief that you're asking for here. What is the harm if they have access to the information? Like, how is the information going to be directed to the harm of you? Well, it's the use of the data, they say, the states. How they identify and how they make cuts is through the access to the data. So like if we stop them from seeing the data, then they can't find the fraud or the useless bureaucrats and fire them. The judge says, but isn't it in DOGE's remit, in their authority? Isn't that what they do? Like, isn't that what the whole agency is for? Is to analyze data that Obama made? Also, if it already happened, then it's not imminent. Like, it's not going to be happening imminently. So like, did they already get the data or what? Well, yeah, Your Honor, they were charged with rooting out waste, but these are not advisors based on statements. It is clear that CMS directions where to cut were from DOGE and Musk, and they're only able to do that through the analysis of the data. Okay, so all the liberals are like, let's get rid of the data. Giving directives is well beyond the executive order. The judge says, look, again, that's fine. All that's okay. But you are here for a TRO. You also want to stop all personnel decisions, right? Now, how does this cause harm? Like, if they make personnel decisions, it's harming you? Well, Your Honor, like they're making major personnel decisions. The only place for safe disposal of nuclear waste, right? Energy, they issued a notice to terminate personnel. And that includes staff who oversee disposals. And so we're all going to have radioactive material burning and corroding through our veins because of Trump and DOGE. Oh no, maybe we can all be Spider-Man. Wouldn't those employees have the claim, right? The judge is like, well, why are you complaining about that? Like, if these employees got fired, shouldn't they be suing? Like, why are you here? Well, our harm, Your Honor, is the state's ability to carry out its function. Loss of administration personnel, there's no one to pick up the phone or to write the checks. And so we're all going to die. Yeah, but the judge says, okay, but TRO actions and OMB access, these are different claims. These are privacy claims. These are other claims. Why wouldn't those other cases provide relief that bars access to the data? Like, there's other cases, people are suing over firing and the Judge Cooper and the Judge Bates case. The states say, well, those were Privacy Act claims. Now, we want to make sure Musk and DOGE aren't using data inappropriately, whatever that is. Okay, but the harm you are alleging, state, is already being considered in other cases, and it's still broad. You want 7 large agencies to not share data and to not fire anybody? 7 agencies? What? Yes, say the states, because relief has not been issued yet. There's a difference between enjoining an agency and enjoining Musk and DOGE, so just go after Musk and DOGE. That is the significant distinction. Okay, but if there's imminent harm, says the judge, wouldn't the harm be to the Department of Transportation and to the Department of Commerce? What would it be? And what would it be to the states? Like, how would you guys be harmed? Plaintiff, the state's kind of just running her mouth, I guess it's a woman, saying inability to carry out the programs and the functions, Your Honor. It's just like a lot of stuff like can't work. Judge asks the government about Musk. Okay, Trump's DOJ, you're next. Tell us about these reports of like 1,000 people who got termination notices. Is that true? You know, Your Honor, I can't confirm if it's been 1,000 or what. Judge says, wait a minute. What? You can't like tell us if that's happened or not? It's not a small thing. It's 1,000 people who got fired. You haven't looked at it? Well, I looked to what was relevant, Your Honor. That's why we're here. I'll look at it. Yeah. And again, this is the judge like, that's a lot of people who got fired. Yeah, that's Trump's prerogative. He's allowed to fire. It's his branch, not yours. You can be sad for them, but it's not even relevant at all to this. He can fire 10,000 if he wants to. And are additional terminations planned in the next 14 days? I can't base what we're talking about on news reports, but you should be able to say we fired and we will be firing X more. Like the judge is like, well, that's what I would be expecting. Government prosecutor from the DOJ says, well, Your Honor, starting with the state declaration to justify imminent injury, only 3 states here today are even discussing data access and concerns by the resident. That's it. There's like 14 states here. Only 3 are talking about data. New Mexico says it has data at 3 agencies. So it's like, well, we got some there and there and there. Now they say that the concern is not the access, so the TRO shouldn't be able to address it. Now all discuss possible actions that may affect downstream, but that's not imminent. So this guy's going through the complaint saying, here's what they're upset about. But there's some data at some agencies, not all 7 of them. Like New Mexico has some in 3, but like that's not even, and they're not even complaining about it. And the harm is not even direct. So I don't even know why we're here. The judge says, well, the reason that language is used is because DOGE actions have been unpredictable and scattershot. No, they have not. They've been very predictable. They're just shocking to you people who thought you had permanent grift ensconced in the federal government. Now, will there be terminations or will there be? Your Honor, look, I can't speak to that. But the basic point here, they say Musk or DOGE is acting without authority. But all the actions that they complained about, that they wrote on paper in their complaint, there is a paper trail. They're all there. Now, what is clear is that you have a properly named officer exercising his authority at every one of these decisions. There is no evidence that is been presented here, Judge, of Musk or DOGE doing the terminating. Okay, never even been presented. So I don't know what they're talking about. Judge says, well, Musk hasn't been appointed or confirmed. So he's essentially a private citizen, right? To fire, hire, contract, terminate. He's doing that all without congressional congressional approval, right? So he's like running wild. Your Honor, he is a special government employee. Their theory is that Musk exercises authoritative influence. Now that is not an appointment clause claim. Influence is not a claim. They have not shown any formal or actual authority to make any decision himself at all. They haven't shown it. The judge says, well, I think you're going a bit too far here. No, Judge. Has the state marshaled any evidence of imminent harm? Have they shown that? The judge says, well, can the government agree to just hold off on mass terminations while the preliminary injunction is litigated? Can you just agree to hold off on firing everybody? I mean, if you don't do that, like, what's the harm? Like, what's the harm if you just keep these people employed? Can you just not fire them, please? The judge says. Government says, what? I can't make that commitment, Judge. Agency heads have the authority to manage their workplace. Well, she says, but the allegation is that DOGE is directing the terminations, and they're accessing data and firing people and terminating the contract. They're essentially running the government. Well, Judge, if they're saying that, that's fine. They can say it, but they need evidence to back it up. And it would be easy to find, okay, if this happened. Someone is exercising power, and they can't show that someone isn't a person with power. It's the Treasury head. It's Interior. It's Rubio. So all they have to do is identify who was fired. Where did the authority come from the firing? It came from the agency heads. So the states haven't done or shown anything saying that they're just puppet strings. The judge says, shoot, pretty good argument. So you're going to fire everybody? All right, states. Has the court, ever granted a TRO regarding the appointment clause? She's like, can I stop somebody from not being properly appointed? States say, I'd have to confirm on that one, Judge. I don't really know. The judge says, no, there aren't. Okay. I haven't found any. This is factually a one-of-a-kind situation because they're suing Trump for running the government. Like, nobody has ever been so dumb before, stupid states, but here you are. There may not be a TRO issued, but we've never experienced this type of wielding of power, says the judge. Our papers speak for themselves on points the government made. Okay, this is probably the plaintiff saying this. Okay. Judge says, no, I haven't found any. It's probably the lawyers who were saying, well, Judge, our papers speak for themselves. Okay. Just because there haven't been one, we've never had a DOGE before. You may have never had the firings before, but there are firings, and the firings are part of the power. Just because you do a lot of the firings doesn't make them unconstitutional. The one firing is constitutional. Multiply it times 10,000 or 50,000 or 100,000. It's the same power, just at scale. They haven't experienced that, but now they're getting a taste. So the states say, Your Honor, we're seeking here to restrain DOGE and Musk. We don't want to restrain the agencies. If they don't have authority, then it won't hurt the agencies, okay? Because they don't have the right to fire these people anyways. The judge says, all right. Thank you all for coming in and making yourself available. I will rule on the motion for TRO and issue further scheduling. I hope to get that out in 24 hours. If you have to come for the injunction briefing, what are you proposing? Let us know. Meet with the government attorneys and work this out and let us know. Margot says, my gut, she says, is the court is going to now deny the TRO and convert it to a preliminary injunction. We'll have another hearing and more evidence presented. This is the reaction to Elon's continual winning. You can hear what this sounds like all across America from the DOGE team. Good work, Elon. Keep it up. All right, so that's happening. We also saw Elon post about this, saying, according to the Social Security database, these are the numbers of people in each age bucket with the death field set to false. And we ran through that earlier in the segment, but the numbers are pretty shocking. Now, what we saw is Fetterman came out and he said, you're so stupid. He said, I want to save billions of your money and make our government more efficient. Says rummaging through your personal crap. And the Democrats are trying this as a new strategy now. They're trying to use profanity. They think it makes them hip with the kids and the youth of America or something. He says this is a party of chaos, loses always. And I don't know, maybe he knows something about that because their party just lost. But Elon says, bruh, look, if I wanted to rummage through random personal crap, I could have done that at PayPal, hello, or X, hello, or Tesla, hello. Having tens of millions of people marked in Social Security as alive when they're obviously dead is a huge problem. Obviously, some of these people would have been alive before America existed. And so think about that for a second, Fetterman. Now, similarly, we have people from USAID and other entities that are having a tough time here. And this is one report here from our friend Steve Friend, FBI whistleblower suspended for blowing the whistle. He was sharing this 60 Minutes clip, and they're just very upset about their jobs all being gone overnight. I know how hard it is. I remember when they were shutting down our businesses for multiple years and then lecturing us saying we deserved a winter of misery or death because we were non-essential. I remember all of that. Yeah, it was a horrific time. So we have very little empathy for these folks, but here's what they sound like on 60 Minutes.
People are really scared. I think that, 12 days ago, people knew where their next paycheck was coming from. They knew how they were going to pay for their kids' daycare, their medical bills, and then all gone overnight.
They're not looking for competency. They're not looking for if you're good at your job. They're looking for pure loyalty tests. And if you don't give it...
Do you mean like what you guys did when you fired everybody who didn't take the jab or who didn't acquiesce to the demands of the CDC state?
You will be punished.
And they had to leave the building. And these are folks who had decades and decades of public service serving USAID across administrations, from, George Bush to Obama to the first Trump administration. And they were never able to walk back in the building again.
Bye. Good riddance. Don't come back. Adios. So good stuff there. Now, we also saw this clip here from our friend Brooke Taylor, who clipped this one for us. And she reports for Fox News. She was saying, look at how much money and grift was going out. It was an insane amount. It says a new government watchdog group reports that HHS, RFK Jr. is going to be taking over that soon, spent $22 billion on migrants over the last few years. And it's like loans to repair credit scores. Unaccompanied minors got money, like business loans, buying cars, billions, $22 billion. It'll make you sick.
Hi, Harris. Well, a new report today from a watchdog group shows that the Department of Health and Human Services has spent $22 billion on migrants over the last few years. We're talking things like cars, homes, even help with credit scores. And guess where this money's coming from? The taxpayers' pockets. Well, Open the Books is the name of this government watchdog group. They dug into this. Their investigation revealed the money was distributed through the Office of Refugee Resettlement, a division within HHS. The office has come under fire in the past. Last year, as everyone may remember, an Inspector General report revealed they could not track the exact whereabouts of 32,000 unaccompanied migrant children. And still, this latest report notes the most funding went to programs for unaccompanied migrant children. Other programs include matching savings for cars and homes, small business loans, and help with credit scores. In 2021, according to this watchdog report, they gave out more than $2 billion in grants. Check 2023 out. That soared to more than $10 billion. This was the same time we saw a record number of migrant encounters at the southern border.
Sick.
And in 2024, another $4 billion. Eligible groups for these migrants from these grants, that is, include migrants from Cuba and Haiti, humanitarian parolees from Afghanistan and Ukraine, special immigrant visa holders from Afghanistan and Iraq, and unaccompanied minors.
It's a dollar that a family can't decide how they spend that money on their own. And that's what we've got to restore, is shift those dollars away from these wasteful programs and let families and individuals decide how they want to spend their own money.
According to the report from Open the Books, the two nonprofits awarded the most funds were the International Rescue Committee and also the Church World Services. We have reached out to HHS and the ORR to respond to this report and to ask them to justify these billions of dollars from taxpayer money. As of this afternoon, we have not heard back from them, Harris.
Well, we're going to see more on that when RFK Jr. comes in. And I think the little bit of fraud that we saw with USAID is just going to be the tip of the iceberg. And we cannot wait to see how far this one goes. But as it stands right now, the states of New Mexico, Arizona, Michigan, California, Connecticut, and the blue teams, including the one with the weird senators from Hawaii, all not looking like they're winning in Judge Chutkan's courtroom, and the DOGE victory will continue ahead.